Well, it's June, and I'm here with Jan and Ducky, and we have all sorts of tips you have for us this month, Jan.
We do. Where do we want to start?
Yeah, the list is probably long this time of year.
Yeah, thinning is one of my biggest problems because if you seed them and they come up, it feels so bad to pull them out.
Right.
So I got some starts to go with the lettuce. Then I seeded a whole package. And so what I do is I go ahead and thin, and then I move some to another bed. And I actually just replant them right here where I am and make sure they're real moist. And then they'll take off and they'll become the big plants later.
Because there's a lot of the seeded stuff that we do, like your carrots and your chives, and it's those tiny little seeds that it's hard to space out.
Right, it is. But this, I just love the way it looks. I could just take scissors and clip the tops off and have
graze it out and then space out.
Right, and have a bag of salad.
Right.
The other thing that happens, it happened this year, but they're not still here, are mushrooms in the mulch. And those are just there. It's good organic matter for your soil, and it's nothing to worry about at all.
It's probably a sign that you have good fertile soil.
It actually is. You ever seen a fairy ring? It's a ring of mushrooms that keeps spreading out, and it's a complete circle, and it's just the soil in that circle. Look it up sometime. It's really fun. If you see one, you're like, I've seen one.
Right.
They're not very common.
At least so we don't have to worry about the mushrooms in the ground.
Not at all. So thinning the seedlings is one of my hardest things to do. Ground beetles is something you also run into, the bigger, they're black, shiny. Right. And then there's also a lot of smaller ones too, but they're all beneficial.
Oh, really?
They eat, especially the big ones, eat snails and slugs and slug eggs and other insects. So usually you find them sort of tucked away under the debris of the soil.
So it's actually a good thing, because a lot of people see a big bug and they're concerned it's eating your plant.
Not at all. The other thing too to remember is to fertilize your pots often if you want to keep your flowers going. You spent the money to get these big gorgeous pots and you want them to still look like that. So once a week's the best way. Once every 2 weeks you could get away with and still have some pretty good looking. Yeah,
because every time you're watering, all that water, it's flushing
going
right out the bottom.
The same thing happens with raised beds. You actually have to take care of them a little bit differently. The other thing we were talking about earlier was powdery mildew.
Yes.
And what else were we talking? Mildew and black spot. Some roses are more susceptible to black spot than others. You can have a whole bunch of roses and have a few of them look terrible, and then and some aren't even bothered by it at all.
Right.
So with black spot, there are sprays that you can use and following the label directions, but usually you just pick off the black spots themselves, get rid of them, get them out of the area so you're not reinfecting the plant.
Right, because they're like little spores that are they're airborne.
Exactly.
They're just going to spread if they're on the ground, clean them off the ground.
It usually doesn't affect your flowers, just has it make all the leaves look kind of funky.
And especially since we've had all this wet, rain and the cool weather,
and
then it's warm and then it's wet and cold. We're going to see a lot
I would
more
expect us to have a pretty funky mildew year this year.
And that's one we want to be on top of ahead of time before waiting before we see it.
You can spray ahead of time, but it in certain years it's a losing battle pretty much. But we have some copper 9 bark that's got lots of mildew on it. Apple trees are going to probably have mildew. I've got some squash over here, some zucchini. It's going to be fine now until the mildew hits it. So there'll be a lot of things that we'll have to look at.
Does it do a lot of damage, or not necessarily, or more?
Well, it makes the plant less thrifty for sure, and so then the fruit doesn't usually affect the fruit, but just the ability to have a lot of fruit because the plant itself isn't doing it.
Right, because it's trying to fight that off and not put production into the fruit.
Right. Another thing you might see is fruit drop. Apples that are not pollinated. Maybe especially if we get some hot weather here for a little bit, you'll see apples dropping fruit drop. And that's mostly because of lack of pollination. So there'll still be some on the tree, but the ones that aren't pollinated will drop.
And that's an okay thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not a sign of damage to the tree or anything. It's
exactly.
Shedding anything that's not needed.
Right. I think we've covered what we were going to cover. Oh, I know. One more thing. Pollination. Pollinators, if you're mowing your lawn, don't do it in the middle of the day when they're feeding, or don't do weeding when they're feeding. Wait until dusk or early morning when they're not there yet.
because you don't want to, damage them or the flowers.
Exactly.
Now, you had also showed me something earlier today. You had kind of dug through your box of tricks, and
Yeah.
we've known each other a long time over the years.
Yeah.
I won't tell you how many that is, but I'm pretty sure you have a picture
I do.
of me that will kind of tell you how long.
Yeah,
you've
I
known
do.
me.
And I think Jeff has it. He'll put it on so others can see it too. That's you and your mom and your brother.
Yes, that's a
When
great,
you
great
were
picture. It'll be popped
Little
up.
guy. Yeah, yeah.
So that's how long we've known Jan. So it's always a pleasure to be out, and your wealth of knowledge in the garden, we always appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to be out here.
It's fun to do it.
So it's
fun to
a
do.
pleasure to see you. Thank you.